We'll turn to Luke chapter 7. I have a quick reference there, but we're really going to spend the time in Psalm 19 to begin with. Excuse me. Um, really just make reference to Luke 7. We'll be spending time at Psalm 19. And I want to talk about this idea that the heavens declare the glory of God, and specifically as that relates to the existence of God. God does exist. He is real and has left himself with many witnesses. And among those things are some of what we're going to read. And I'd like to talk about that. I'd also like to talk about some things that have been maybe less accurate than they could be. A little bit of a correction on how to read these things and how to use them accurately to glorify the Lord in this matter. But at Luke 7, in verse 9, is the story of the centurion who has a servant at home that's suffering and calls Jesus to come or to heal his child. Jesus heads to his house and he said, "You don't need to come inside. Just say the word and my servant will be healed." And Jesus, in the 9th verse, is all we're looking at right now, on hearing it, marveled and turned to the crowd that followed him, said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." So that Roman centurion had a faith of such a kind that not even Israel had evidenced in the time of Jesus. The relevance of this is that question that we mentioned at the beginning: why believe? Why believe? And how do you believe? What is it to believe? When he says this is a great faith, and he marvels at it, well, what is that? And so that's to introduce the idea, the thought process, to go to the 19th Psalm. There, in the first verse, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. And it's a very famous verse, this Psalm 19 and verse 1. It's very famous, very well noted, very well used, and that is fine, and probably rightly so. But I do wonder if maybe the way that it's being used is not as effective as it could be. And so I wanted to look at this in a little bit more detail and understand it. But the straightforward meaning of that is that the heavens and the sky are getting this idea across, that there is glory, that there is work, that there's something more than just what we can see. The first part of that verse, the heavens declare the glory of God. Glory is declared by the heavens. We're saying glory is a created thing. The heavens are a created thing. They are glorious. If you think about the stars, the sun, the moon, right? The beauty of these things, the size and magnitude of these things, practically unfathomable. But they're created. And they are glorious things. The stars are very beautiful. I know some among us enjoy looking for dark skies. There's apps and websites that'll help you find dark skies. Austin's not one of them, I'll tell you now. We got a lot of light here. And if you get out to those parks or to a ranch or whatever, you get out away from the cities and have a chance to look up at night, you will see the glory of the heavens. You see the stars, the moon like you've never seen it. Just a beautiful thing, an amazing, a glorious thing. And they're all created things. What we're saying about this is if the heavens exhibit glory, and they do, if the heavens exhibit wonder, well, what then can be the nature? What then can be the glory of the one who put those things into place? The one who made those things. This is what we're saying, and I realize it's a subtle thing. What I think has been a mistake has been to argue that because the heavens are glorious, therefore the one that made them must be more glorious than they are, or must have so much glory that he is divine. And that's a mistake, because by doing that, you're putting the created thing on the same scale as the creator of that thing. It's not that he has glory the way stars have glory, but he just has so much more than they do that turns him into a god instead of a glowing rock in the sky. No, not even close. That's not what it means at all. That's not the same thing. The God who made this universe and who made the things in it is not like this universe and the things in it. He made them. What we're saying is the heavens are glorious. And we know that, and we can observe that. Well, how much greater must the Creator be who put those things into place? What can be the nature of somebody who could do something like this, make this, put this into motion, regulate this? It's a subtle difference, but I think it's an important difference. Because if we're trying to say that God is like the creation, just a lot better, that's a big mistake, because it lowers his status, it changes his nature, and that's where the atheist lives. No, it's not what it's saying. What it's saying is, if the heavens are this wonderful, how wonderful must be the one who made them. We can see the glory of these things. What must be happening with the one that made them? So also when it says, the sky above proclaims his handiwork. And I realize that Hebrew poetry comes in couplets, line A and line B, and usually the second line is a rephrasing or reformulation of the first line, and the point of it is to emphasize something or nail something down or expand upon some concept or other. That's how it works. That's the way it's written. That's why there's indentations. Those things follow on the first one. Excuse me. And so this also parallels the first line. The sky corresponds to the heavens. Proclaims corresponds to declares, and handiwork that belongs to God, his handiwork, it corresponds to his glory. All right? Handiwork is a created thing. What we mean by this is the fact that the sky does things. The sky is responsible for some things. You know this? What's the difference between the sky and the heavens above? Well, the heavens is outer space. The sky is the atmosphere. Let's deal with that first. People talk about the firmament. That's the sky, the atmosphere we live in. The sky starts at the ground. You know that, right? If you jump, you're in the sky. All right. The wind and the rain, right? But the wind sculpts the clouds, doesn't it? And the weather patterns. The wind has a lot to do, the sky has a lot to do with the clouds and the moisture, the gathering, the rain, the precipitation, and the wind. Well, the precipitation makes it possible for us to grow foods, for us to live, and all that is necessary. The wind and the rain even shape the surface of the earth. I've never been to the Grand Canyon, although I do hear it's grand. Um, I love Palo Duro personally. But the sky, if you will, the winds, the rains, these things are sculpting the landscape of the earth. They're sculpting this, the skyscape of the clouds above. But there's no hands, right? Except in the cartoons, and in the superstitious uh, murals and carvings of idolatrous practices. No, the sky, the wind, they don't have hands, but they are sculptors. And they're sculptors of beautiful things on earth, aren't they? The sky can do this, right? If the natural cycles can do this, what can the one who made them do? That's what you're saying. Not that, oh, he can do so much more than they do. He does like they do, but he's just a lot better at it. No, that's not the same thing. God is not wind and dirt and water. What's similar is the fact that the sky proclaims that handiwork, as in the hand of God, if you will, to change the shape of the land is that wind, is that rain. It's about capability, handiwork, meaning what can his hands do? What can you accomplish with your hands? That's how you do what you do. His handiwork. What we're saying is not that he's even more capable of shaping things than the winds and the rains are. No, we're saying if wind and rain can do this, what can the hands of the one who made wind and rain do? What is the nature of the one who did that regarding, well, with regard to his power, his abilities, his capabilities? Well, it's divine. It's divine. I don't know if that's making sense. We're going to keep going. And if it's not making sense yet, maybe it will. In the second verse of the song, and we're not going to do all the verses, by the way, don't worry. But in the second verse, day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. Day to day and night to night. It's a cycle. It's a pattern. It's even a joke. The two philosophers stayed up all night arguing about where the sun went when suddenly it dawned upon them. Oh man. But it's true. They're cycles, day to day and night to night. They're cycles. They're predictable. But this is saying it pours out speech. This is abundant. Night to night reveals knowledge. It's uncovering this, taking away the veil, taking away, the hidden. If it seems hidden, it's unhidden now. If it seems covered up and cryptic, it's been decoded. It's uncovered now. By what? By cycles? Yes. What it's saying is the cycles abundantly say something. Speech and knowledge, they say something that is understandable. That's the point. We can understand what they're saying. They're saying it abundantly. They pour it out and over again, right? Twice a day. It can be understood, is what it's saying. And the marvel of this is the 3rd and 4th verses. There is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Right. Day to day, night to night, the daytime cycle, the diurnal cycle. There's no words. It doesn't say anything. Neither does the sky say anything. Although people think they hear whispers in the wind. No, it doesn't. There's no speech. There are no words. There's no voice to be heard of nature calling or speaking to you or whatever. No, that won't be the case. It's not that kind of thing. And yet, their voice goes throughout all the earth. Their words to the end of the world. They have the voice of reason. That's what this is. The voice of reason rings throughout the land. That's what it's saying. And not just this land, all of the land, all of the earth. Everywhere there is day and there is night. Everywhere there is a sky with wind and rain and whatever else, snow. Everywhere you can look up and see the heavens, the expanse of the heavens above, the beauty and the glory of that. It's the voice of reason, and it's available to everybody who dwells on planet Earth, which last time I checked is all of us. Although we may not all be from here, judging by comments sometimes. But, it's available to everybody is what he's getting at, and it's reason. It's reasoning with us. God, who made these things, is reasoning with us by means of these things that he made. And all without a word, although he says they're words, the voice goes through the earth, the words to the end of the world. Even though he just said there's no speech, there's no words, their voice isn't heard. Literally, and then figuratively, if you're willing to reason with the psalmist. This is written, it's part of a national literature, it's something that's been around forever and ever. You can't sit there and think, oh, it just doesn't make sense. This guy's just crazy, contradicting himself. No, that's hubris if you think that way. You have a lot of other problems if that's the way you think. No, it's very clear that he's talking literally at first, and he moves to the spiritual application, which is, despite the fact there's no speech, there's no words, there's no voice, they nonetheless get across to us a message that is just as clear as if it had been spoken. That's what he's getting at. And so now I turn back to Luke chapter 7, and let's try this again. This is why we started there. Because in Luke 7, where we read about the centurion, what makes his faith great is that he can see correspondences. He can see correlations. He can draw conclusions from what he's seeing. You might call it making application. They talk about making the application of the scriptures. Let's be sure that we know what that means. It means this, in Luke 7, 2 through 10, which we're going to read. Now a centurion had a servant who was sick and at the point of death, who was highly valued by him. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, he's worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation. He's the one who built us our synagogue. And Jesus went with them. When he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, Lord, don't trouble yourself. I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. That's why I didn't presume to come out to you. But say the word and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. I say to one, go, and he goes. To another, come, and he comes. To my servant, do this, and he does it. And when Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turning to the crowd that was following him, said, I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith, which includes them. And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant well. Turns out he didn't even have to say the word. But this is the great faith that Jesus marveled at. The centurion, in the 8th verse, or even the 7th, just say the word, and it's done. I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell one to go, and he does. What's he doing? How's that faith? The reason we're talking about this is because this explains how to read Psalm 19. The reasoning that the psalmist is using in Psalm 19 is the reasoning that the centurion is using in Luke 7. That's what we're getting at. The centurion is a person, by the way, we've assumed that you know what centurion is. I'm sorry. The centurion is a Roman officer with 100 soldiers. So it's a person of authority who can do lots of things. They are sent as security forces to secure a city, to repel small incursions, to keep law and order. They have the ability to transport people and things of great value by surrounding them with soldiers, with chariots, whatever is necessary. The commander of 100 Roman soldiers has a considerable amount of authority, the ability to do things, to get things done. They do construction as well. They'll put up walls and fences and whatever else. So he says, all you have to do is say the word. Why? Because that's all I do when I'm doing my work as a centurion, an officer of the law of Rome, a man in authority with soldiers under me. What does it mean? It means I assume that Jesus is a man with authority. And that authority means he can get things done. And he doesn't have to use his hands to do it himself. And he doesn't have to be there on site in person in order for it to be done and to be done to his specification. Because that's true. That's what it is to have an authority in this world, like the centurion does. He doesn't have to transport this prisoner safely by means of chariots and horses overnight. He just has to tell his soldiers to do that, and they will. He doesn't have to pick up the shovel to repair this breach in the wall for the safety of the city. He tells his soldiers to do that, and they will. And they'll do it the way that he wants them to, or else, right? The centurion is saying, I on earth am in authority. I on earth have people that work for me. I have more hands than I have, right? More feet than I have. I can get things done just by saying a word and sending the soldiers to go do it. I don't have to be there in person. He realizes all of that is true of his own authority. And since he recognizes that Jesus is an authority because of the signs he's doing, because of the teaching that he's doing, well, it just makes sense, doesn't it? Actually, it just makes sense. Why, Jesus, you don't have to come here. It's a small thing, really. You can just say the word. You can just send somebody. Send whatever that is without specifying what correlates. He's saying his centurion authority maps to Jesus's heavenly authority. He's not saying Jesus has soldiers under him, but whatever the mechanism is, Jesus doesn't have to do it himself. He can just cause it to happen by means of his authority, his power. And he says, I've got all kinds too. Different ones can do different things. There's enough of them that we can get lots of things done at the same time. And I don't have to be at any of those things. I do it all with the word of mouth. So Lord, you don't have to come in here. Don't trouble yourself. Don't trouble yourself. I'm not even worthy for you to come in here. That's why I didn't presume to come to you in person. I sent, elders of the Jews, your own people, men who are holy. I'm a Gentile, right? But please do heal my servant, right? That's what he's getting at. I know this can be done. Well, that's faith. That's trust. He knows the Lord can do it, and that it can be done, that there is the power to accomplish this thing. But it's more than that. What's happening is he's drawing the conclusion that authority is authority. Just like glory is glory and handiwork is handiwork and reason is reason. In Psalm 19, the Psalm's reasoning. If the heavens are glorious, doesn't that have to map onto God? If the sky is handiwork, declares his handiwork, doesn't that have to map to heavenly handiwork, God's ability to do things? It does. Faith is drawing conclusions. You trust. And so you draw conclusions. You make safe assumptions, maybe we would say. I hate to say the word assumption, but what we mean by that is you're drawing the right conclusion from the facts. If this one clearly has the power of God on his side, he works these miracles, he teaches like no man ever spoke. Well, sure, he can heal my servant just with a word. He doesn't have to come in here. That makes perfect sense. Or how about Acts chapter 14? Go with me to Acts 14 for a minute. When Paul lands on an island, and the people there have never heard anything about the real God. They're completely entrenched in the Roman practices. I don't believe there's Jews here on the island of Lystra. One of the things that Paul says to them in the 16th verse and 17th verses of Acts 14, in past generations he allowed all the nations to walk in their own ways, yet he did not leave himself without witness, for he did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness. God didn't leave himself untestified. It's literally what it says. Untestified or unwitnessed. How did he provide the witness? By means of doing good, giving rains, and giving fruitful seasons. These satisfy the heart with food and gladness. So the good he did was giving rains and satisfying hearts. Why the rains from heaven? Because of the fruitful seasons. And the satisfaction of the heart, well, the food and the gladness. These testify about God in the same way that Psalm 19 does. The rains are from heaven. And the fruitful seasons are cycles. They're reliable, they're predictable. We need that rain. We're shaped by it, we're fed by it in some sense. Hearts are satisfied with food that comes forth because of the rain and the fruitful seasons and the gladness. That stability of mind, knowing that these are the cycles, these are the seasons, this is how it is, this is how it works. We do what we need to do at the right time in the right ways, and things work out. So what we're saying here is, if you're reasoning as Paul is reasoning, and as the centurion reasoned, you're reasoning like a psalmist. If the rains producing the grains in Acts 14 are good, well, how much better is the one who made those rains and those grains? And how much better is his produce, what he provides for us? Are rains good? Yes, they are. They say right as rain. Yes, rains are good. Grain that comes from the rain, the things that we grow, agriculture, yeah, this is good. We need this thing to live. And it is good. And there's a whole cycle there. And it's an amazing chain of events that goes from rain to bread to the eater. Compare Isaiah 55. How much better then? If those are good for you, how much better is God? And what God provides. If rain fills the heart with food and with gladness, does God fill the heart with spiritual food and knowledge of salvation? Yes. How much better is that spiritual food and that spiritual blessing? It's far greater. It's a totally different thing. They're not even the same scale. As they say, it's not the same ballpark. It's not in the ballpark. It's not even the same ballpark. This is what we're getting at when we talk reason like the psalmist in Psalm 19. And excuse me. And the difference that I'm trying to make clear. We don't want to make the mistake of comparing the Creator to his created things. They're not on the same scale. They're not the same kind of thing, and those arguments are a mistake. Have you actually talked to somebody who is educated in philosophy, or talked to somebody who is an atheist and has thought a lot about these things? You're going to have a hard time if that's the way that you're arguing and reading that text, because that's not correct. This is correct. The heavens declare his glory. Well, who made glory? How is that even possible? What kind of God is that? The skies, his handiwork. Well, look what the skies accomplish. What must God be capable of? That's what it's saying. It requires faith. Yes, I know. If the rain produces the grain and the grain is good for us and we rely on it, how much more the God who created that whole process? Does he produce things that are good for us? Should we rely on him? If rains fill the heart, should God fill the heart? Does God fill the heart with his word, with his good things, with what we need to protect our minds? Yeah, sure he does. It has to be so. Finally, we go to Acts 17 as we talk about obedience to the gospel. There, Paul speaks in Athens. They also are new to this. He says, beginning at the 26th verse, that God made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth. where, by the way, they have access to the sun and the moon and the stars and the winds and the rain and day to day and night to night and fruitful seasons. Having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, so that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him, grope for him, find him, and yet he's not actually far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said. We are indeed his offspring. Since then we are God's offspring, we ought not to think the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of men. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he's fixed a day on which he'll judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he's appointed. Of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. Yes, there's a lot we can know about the nature of God. There's a lot we can know about the nature of God by looking at nature itself. There's a lot that we can see in the cycles, in the seasons. But ultimately, we do need his word and this message that Paul is bringing. That salvation is in Jesus. He's the one whom God has raised from the dead. Slightly different lesson there, but death is created too, you know. It has no power over its creator. Jesus was never going to be held by it. It's impossible. It's a different lesson. We'll talk about that. But this one is raised from the dead, and it's the assurance that God has given to all of the authority of this one, of the judgment of this one, and of the promise to us that we too can live. So have you come to God in faith? Have you believed in Jesus, his Son? Have you repented of walking in your own ways and doing what seemed right to you instead of listening to reason and looking for God, though he's not far from you? If you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, if you repent, if you confess him as the Son of God, you are ready to be baptized in his name. Put to death the old person of sin and be resurrected a new person, created in Christ Jesus. We stand ready to help you to obey the gospel and become a Christian to obtain forgiveness of sins. Are you a Christian who has not lived right? You got to repent and go back to what we have been reading, to see God between the lines, to draw the right conclusions about his provision for you, his protection for you, his promises of salvation. You can do this. If you have sinned in some way, repent and ask God for forgiveness. If we can pray with you, brother or sister, we'll do it. Nobody here is above temptation. Understand the glory of God. By means of the things that he created, we can draw the right conclusions about him. If you need to obey the gospel of Jesus, if you need the prayers of the saints, please let your need be known now by coming to the front while we stand and sing the song selected.